Welcome to Spotlight Television. I'm Damon Roberts. Kelly Carter is the CEO of Beacon Retirement Planning Group and the co-founder of the M&A Wealth Transfer Conferences. He has worked directly with pre-retirees, retirees, and business owners for more than 30 plus years. He has presided over hundreds of wealth preservation seminars and has spoken to thousands of retirees concerned about their transition to retirement and how to ensure that they do not outlive their savings. We are excited to have him here with us today because business owners throughout the United States consider this man to be the exit planning retirement expert when it comes to consulting entrepreneurs on the journey to transitioning into retirement. Please welcome Kelly Carter to Spotlight Television. Kelly, nice to have you here.
Damon, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. We're excited to talk to you. It's such an interesting time for M&A. I've heard M&A was dead over the last couple of years, so I'm interested to talk to you about that. But I guess let's start by telling us a little bit about Beacon Retirement and tell us about kind of how you made that transfer into the M&A Wealth Transfer Conferences.
Yeah, so got into business. Beacon Retirement Planning Group was started a little over 25 years ago with the intent to change the framework of retirement planning, really what we call financial life planning. We were kind of pioneers in that holistic approach, looking at building a transition plan around your financial life. Not just financial planning. It's not just about the numbers. It's about who you are, where you want to be, things of that nature, your family, your goals. And as we saw the demographics start to change, which in 2011, the first baby boomers started turning 65. And as we know, 10,000 a day have turned 65 with the last group in 2030. All of those baby boomers will be 65 plus. And as we saw the progression with what we call the Horizon Formula, which is kind of a baseline for our consulting, we had a lot of the business owners coming to us going, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm ready to exit. What do I do? Where do I start? So we started to see this transition. And when you look at 77 million baby boomers, and that group of 55 plus makes up 21% of the population, but they own a disproportionate 51% of all privately held businesses in the United States.
Wow. So when you think of the Beacon side of your business and then the M&A Wealth Transfer Conference, talk to me about the difference between the two. Do they work together? Tell me kind of how they're differentiated.
Great question. So within the M&A world, we have developed what's called the 6-1 team. And basically there are 6 key team members that you need to help make a successful transition, and you need to focus on one operating system. So as we saw there was fragmentation in the market and looking at these small to medium-sized businesses that were not getting the same attention as the big mainstream businesses doing $1 billion of revenue, we as a financial advisory firm are one of those 6 key pieces. And essentially what's happening is, believe it or not, the financial advisor today is the most trusted advisor in the M&A transaction. So we act as a quarterback. So what we figured out was there was a lot of fragmentation in the space, and we wanted to design a place where we could have these entrepreneurs and business owners around the country come to one event to get all the information from the key players and figure out, how do I make this transition successful? So we brought all the industry experts together in one place to be able to provide all that information.
So I want to know about the people who are coming to you, the kind of clients you're working with, but I want to just continue to lay the groundwork of a little bit about who you are and what you've done. So you're also an executive producer. So you were an executive producer on a feature documentary film called M&A. So tell me about how you got involved with this, why it was so important, and tell me about the actual film.
Great question. So we're excited to be involved in that project. Doug Orchard, who is the director, has done numerous films, documentary films, in the space about retirement, about the retirement dilemma, and kind of where we're headed right now. When you look at the national debt, when you look at all of the other geopolitical issues and the legislative risks that exist, this is a big issue. So Doug approached us about being involved in this project. And M&A is a movie that's designed to, again, bring all the industry experts into one hour kind of documentary to explain what's going on in the world of M&A today. And most big firms have teams in place to help them navigate, whether it's growth through acquisition or you're looking to exit your business for a generational legacy play. But the movie allows Doug to tell a story around a family that's going through this very process. And there's a lot of firms out there that are looking to essentially steal your business in most cases, where they will come in and they will grind you and buy your business for pennies on the dollar to turn around and sell it for multiples. So if you don't know the rules of the game as a small entrepreneur, you're very, very good chance that you're not going to be successful in that process. So when we had the opportunity to participate, our passion is helping these business owners and entrepreneurs be able to know, where do I go to get the information, and how do I build that 6-1 advisory team? And that's why the movie is part of the day for the M&A and Wealth Transfer Conference.
Very interesting. What an interesting way to use it. And I'm sure, like you said, you said you're dealing on more of the, not the guys playing in the $1 billion. You're playing a little on the more. How would you describe the kind of client that's coming to you? Who are you working with?
Yeah, so our client base looks like that individual or family-owned business. The M&A world, they refer to it as the lower middle market, where they're doing anywhere between $5 million to $100 million in revenue. And those are considered what they call the lower middle market. Generally, again, they don't have the resources and the team that a large corporation has to look at growth through acquisition, if you're going to try to expand and buy other companies, or exit on your own terms. So again, the movie starts as a foundational education to say, here's what not to do, and here's the things you need to look for. And then we bring the speakers and the key strategic players in the space into these conferences to be able to provide you the resources to educate yourself on the best way to build value. Because if you maximize your value, you're going to maximize your exit. And there's a lot of moving parts. It's a very complicated transaction, legal, tax, regulatory issues, depending on the industry. So there are a lot of moving parts, and that's why the ability to put those people in a room or to use the movie as a springboard for education has been very successful.
Yeah, and you just used the word I was thinking of, the education part, because I'm sure when you're dealing with the $1 billion boys and then the not $1 billion boys, that, like you said, the not $1 billion boys can get taken advantage of pretty quickly. How much of what you do, at least in that first couple steps, is education to them of what to look out for, why you don't want to do this? This is how you get taken advantage of. How much of what you do is that?
Oh, I'd say it's the first 25% of the conversation. And what happens is the ultimate goal of selling your business, whether, again, exiting for various reasons, as we talked about with this baby boomer population and the expansion of that 65 plus generation, there are real concerns in those businesses continuing. You've got a situation where a lot of times the children, the family members aren't interested in mom and dad's business, even though it's what sustained that family for 25, sometimes 30, 35 years. So we're looking for a generational legacy exit. So that lower middle market usually doesn't have access to the resources that the big firms have. And so by bringing all of the experts together, we are providing them a platform to be able to know what to look out for, what to do, what not to do, and then find the right people, the right partners on that 6-1 team, which we're going to talk about, to make sure that you're operating efficiently, you're maximizing your value, and that you're going to get the best deal for you and your family at exit.
Yeah. So obviously we've talked a little bit about M&A and the Wealth Transfer Conference and why you started it. But what would you say the long-term goal is? You've kind of talked about the 6-in-1 plan. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit. But what is the end goal? Is it strictly education? Is it being a one-stop shop for people, like you say, who maybe have a family legacy and not sure if they want to stay in it, but if they want to exit, don't know how to do it properly? Who's the client you're speaking to mostly today, and what's the end goal to be for the company?
Well, obviously the end goal is to help these businesses transition, to sell, to realize their lifelong work. So the transaction is the ultimate end goal. But again, starting with the education and then bringing the team in. So we formed what we call the 6-1, and those are the 6 key advisors and the one business operating system that all businesses need to have. So when you talk about the 6-1, it starts with the financial advisor. And in most cases, that financial advisor is going to help guide all of the other strategic team members because you've got a lot of things to consider. What's next, right? You're going to sell this business. This has been your life for 30 years. You've probably made a lot of sacrifices. And a lot of these business owners wear a hat, almost like a badge of honor that, well, I wasn't able to take vacations because I built this business. Well, that's really not, it's not really the best way to go, because nobody cares when you're gone. So how do you take that value and all the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it and turn it into a generational legacy? And what's next, right? What's your wealth gap? So the financial advisor, the taxes, right? We know taxes are going to be a big issue. In most cases, they could be up to a third of the transaction if not structured properly, which will deter a lot of these smaller business owners in that lower middle market from doing a transaction, because the net number after taxes is not enough. So you've got the financial advisor, then you've got the CPA. You need a CPA firm, probably a national firm, that specializes in M&A transactions. As much as you might like your cousin Bob, who does your taxes, they may not be versed in that space with the M&A. You need an M&A attorney, because there's a lot of legal intricacies in negotiating and contracts. You need an M&A advisor, which is really an investment banker. And that investment banker is going to go out and find the buyers through their network. They're going to put together your EOV, or estimate of value, to determine what does that number look like, right? It's a multiple of various factors. So with the M&A advisor's role in conjunction with the investment or the M&A attorney, it's critical. Then you've got an exit planner. In a lot of cases, we're a certified exit planning advisory firm, known as a CEPA designation. We will act as part of that exit planner with them. And then you need valuation. That's the 6 legs of that 6 part of that team. That valuation is, how do I grow my value if I've got a 12-month to 36-month runway to increase the value, because the multiple of your sale is in the last year. So that is the 6. The 1 is an operating system. We work very closely with Entrepreneurs Operational System, EOS. And EOS is a platform built around a book written by Gino Wickman called Traction. And it's really designed around creating operational efficiencies and making sure that your team and your company understands your vision to increase your value, which is going to increase the multiple at exit. So that's the 6-1 team that we talk about.
As I listen to you and I'm thinking of someone running a small business, a family business for years, it seems so complicated. Is there I don't know if you know this, is there a percentage of M&A that doesn't happen because either the business owner is too overwhelmed, or they haven't planned correctly, or I'm sure there's got to be a big percentage of they either don't go forward because they think it's too overwhelming? Like, what does that look like?
Well, and the statistics support that. So when you look at those 3 million businesses held by that baby boomer generation right now, which is over 51% of the privately held businesses in the United States, it has a market value of over $10 trillion. Here's the scary number. 80% of those businesses will not sell. That means there's $8 trillion of potential generational wealth that's going to disappear in that lower middle market. Why? Because they don't have the tools and resources to be able to guide them through that process. So a lot of business owners feel like, I'm going to be at the desk and they're going to take me out with my boots on. And so not knowing what your alternatives are is why we designed the M&A and Wealth Transfer Conference platform, to bring that education to them, to say, look, it can be done. Is it complicated? Absolutely. Is it a culmination of your life's work? Absolutely, which means you're going to have a commitment to the 6-1. You're going to have a commitment to the time while you're still while you're still running and growing your business in that last phase before we exit.
Yeah, I would think getting to that feeling of being comfortable, of not only being able to get through the transaction, feeling comfortable with who you're working with, though, obviously has to be such an important part of it. So again, I'd like you just to kind of make the make the case one more time on kind of what separates you guys and why it is so important for someone in this situation thinking about an exit and maybe being overwhelmed, why talking to you guys or engaging with you guys is so important.
Well, again, being able to have all of the experts in one place at these conferences has been really important, because we have all of the 6-1 team there to provide education and explain to you what you need to consider. These firms have all been vetted. These are nationally based firms that have a tremendous reputation. And you don't want to scrimp on an exit plan because you could leave as much as 50% of your value on the table. And we see it a lot with companies that are coming in, individuals and business owners coming to the conferences, raising their hand at any point during the day and saying, hey, I'm ready to have that conversation. Or I've already started it and I feel like I'm maybe not heading down the right path or I don't have the right team members. So our goal was to bring those experts into one place where you can be involved and get, where you can get elbow to elbow to really have a real conversation with those individuals and those companies that provide these services.
So let's talk about the landscape. You touched on a little bit about where we are in the country, $35 trillion in debt, running $1 trillion deficits. Taxes is something I don't talk to anybody who doesn't think taxes have to go up in this country. We could talk a little bit about that, but let's talk about M&A. Let's talk about the landscape of M&A. Obviously, if you've watched any mainstream TV over the last couple of years, you've heard that M&A has been pretty much dead. This year seems to be more on the rise. From your point of view, where is M&A right now? What's the landscape look like?
Well, you remember 4 years ago, we try not to talk about that time, but we had a little bit of we had a little detour. Came back out of it. 2022 obviously was not a very profitable year. Interest rates have come up, inflation, this $1 trillion deficit number that continues to grow is very, very scary. You look at the issues with Social Security. But what's happening is you still know that 51% of privately held businesses are owned by that 55, 60, 65-year-old group. There's going to be a transition at some point. So what a lot of the acquisition firms, the PE firms, strategic buyers are looking for, they're looking for a seasoned business that's been run for 25 or 30 years that can add value to their bottom line, whether they're consolidating in an industry, and it doesn't matter what industry it is. It's amazing to me how many of those low middle market companies are out there that are doing very well that don't have a transition plan. So the market itself, granted interest rates are up, but the acquisition world is starting to heat back up because you've got this continued graying, what they call the silver tsunami. And there are economic impacts. When you look at these folks retiring or selling their companies or transitioning, there's a potential talent gap. You've got 30, sometimes 35, 40 years of experience, which experience is truly valuable. Sometimes these business owners want to step back and stay on, but they don't want to manage and run the business anymore. They want to be in it and be a part of it for their employees and their family. But I think we're seeing an expansion in the M&A marketplace in that lower to middle market because there's a lot of value there.
So when I think about an individual retiring, right now in this climate, you think about risk, fees, and taxes as you get into that red zone of retirement and what it's going to look like at the end. And you look at people in this country with 401ks and IRAs and most of their money that they've saved in there and basically partnered with the government, and they're going to tell you how much you get to keep. You would think those are the big risk factors for just an individual retiring. When you think about the risk factors for someone in the M&A space who maybe has to add that into their getting out plan, what are the biggest risks? Is it risks, fees, and taxes still, or are there different challenges for someone in this space? And what are those, and how do you guys help them target those to avoid making those mistakes?
That's a great question. Again, as we grew our firm at Beacon Retirement Planning Group and got into the M&A space, the financial advisory piece is critical to that conversation. Risk, fees, and taxes are a big deal. You've got the market risk, you've got the legislative risk, which, as we know, every 4 years we have big elections. We got another one coming up at some point every 2 years. And so really tax law is written in pencil. And depending on who's in charge, those are the people that get out the eraser and change the rules. But when you look at, we talk about it all the time, the light at the end of the tunnel. And in our world, we treat that light as an oncoming train. And if we know it's coming and we have ability to get off the track sooner than later, let's start talking about it. So you've got the risk, you've got taxes, tax mitigation, right? Not tax avoidance, because you can't do that, but it's tax mitigation. And there are tools and strategies that can be implemented now for an exit 12, 24, 32, 3 years from now to reduce that tax liability. And then looking at the overall market risk, right? The last thing you want to do when you retire is have a big chunk of your retirement money lose 20 or 30% when you're counting on it for income. So those factors are even more magnified for a business owner looking to exit, because you've got a large sum of money. It's, in most cases, it's the largest transaction of their life. And they built that company from nothing. And now you're taking something where you started with, $10 in your pocket and now it's worth $50 million. That's a lifetime legacy play. But when you look at a third of it going out the door without proper planning, it's a critical factor.
Yeah, I'm interested to know what you think about in your space, in the M&A space, when you talk to business owners, because when I think about individual retirees, I feel like most people don't even know where it's just sticking with taxes, just because I'm interested in it. I feel like most people don't even really know where they fit in the bracket, what bracket they're actually in. They don't realize how high taxes have been in this country. They don't understand. Everybody feels like they're overtaxed all the time because there's so many different taxes. But looking at where we have been, taxes right now are sufficiently lower than they have been in past years. And again, people with IRA and 401k money, when you look at, like, as you just described, a deal where the guy, your general partner, gets to kind of change the ink at any time and say, okay, now this is how much you're going to be able to keep. That's not a great deal. And I feel like the education part, where people don't really understand not only where they fall, what possibly could be to come, what they do to avoid those things. There's a big gap in the education learning process. Do you find that in this as well?
Oh, absolutely, because you got to remember, these family-owned or individually owned businesses, what has been their focus for the last 25, 30 years?
Running the business.
Running the business. And now, and along the way, they've done some tax planning, not much. We don't see it very often. They fell into the old trap of, put as much as you can in a tax-deferred bucket, pay no tax on that dollar. Now it's grown to $20. You're going to pay tax on 20. Yeah. The math,
pay it on the seeds, not the harvest.
Seed and the harvest, right? So we talk about that all the time. And understanding that you still have some time to do some tax planning, because taxes are probably not going down. If you go all the way back to the late 70s, where we had 18, 21% inflation, and you had interest rates at 19%, and you had a 90% tax bracket on modified adjusted gross above $200,000, that was when Ronald Reagan came in, and that was the first big tax cut and reform act that happened in 1981. So you had TEFRA, TAMRA. I'm a big tax guy. I love understanding the history. But taxes today are on sale, and they are not going to be any cheaper than they are today. So understanding how to mitigate that risk, that tax risk, is a big factor, which is why the financial advisor, our role in this team of 6-1, is critical, because if we don't offset or prepare for what that tax liability may be and how do we reduce it, then you're going to walk out with sometimes 40, 45% less, depending on what state you're in, with your state partner and your federal partner, and getting a big chunk of that money.
Yeah. And you said something before, too, that I think is also important. You mentioned the fact that looking at an exit 12, 13, 14 years down the road. I'll bet there's a significant amount of business owners who get to that, okay, I want to be out in 3 years. Let me start thinking about this. And man, you've kind of missed the boat. Is there a lot of that?
Yeah, and again,
and what do you do? Can you still,
if
someone comes to you and says, I want to be out in 5 years.
Absolutely.
What do you do?
So what we're seeing right now is 75% of those businesses we talked about, those 3 million businesses owned by those baby boomers, would like to be out in 10 years or less. So depending on your runway, now here's what's critical, right? There are other factors that may drive a sale of a business sooner than later, right? You've got death of the owner, right? We see that a lot. Divorce, disability, disagreement, or just dilemmas, things like 2020 that happened, distress that you can't control. So we call that the 5 Ds. And if you don't have preparation for that while we're getting ready for an exit, it doesn't matter if you said, hey, I want to get out in 12 months and your numbers are good. We need to look at your operating system. We need to look at cleaning up your HR, your taxes, all the other employee issues you may or may not have, and get a clean slate, because a buyer is going to want to know, where are you headed? What is your growth pattern? If you wait too long and your business takes a downturn, it could cost you 20, 30, 40% in value because you weren't ready.
So we've talked a lot of numbers, but just to bring it back a little bit, if you had to highlight, let's say your top 5 key things when someone looking for an M&A, somebody to work with, what would be the top 5 things for a business owner to feel prepared when looking for someone to work with?
That's a great question. The top 5, obviously you have to look at your operating system. Does your business model match your vision? Do you have, we call it, basically in the world of business, you have SOP, right? Standard operating procedure. With the M&A and Wealth Transfer conferences, we have SOP, which is strategy, organization, and preparedness. The strategy key being, do you have a strategy and a vision for the business? Are you on a growth factor? What operating system? Again, we talk about EOS and working with an EOS implementer. That's a lot of times step 1 to clean up the vision, making sure you have the right people in the right seats on the right bus. And sometimes we find companies that have the wrong people who've just been there too long. And those are hard conversations, but at the end of the day, you need to really clean up your organizational structure. Then you look at strategy. That's where, what we do at Beacon Retirement Planning Group as part of the 6-1 is provide that guidance on the wealth gap. What's next? What do you want to do? What have you not done in your life because you've been building this business, right? What's the tax situation? So you look at that piece. That's probably critical. And then the preparedness, making sure you're ready for that transition and running the business. I think the legal and the investment banking, that M&A advisor, is also critical because they're going to build your estimate of value. We see a lot of cases where business owners think their company is worth this much, but in reality, because they have some gaps, it's only worth this much. Well, our role as certified exit planning advisors is to help you take that and build that value and scale it, right? So that instead of being down here at a lower valuation, we want to help you grow so your multiple at exit is better. So those key points are critical to making sure you have the right team in place. And again, the folks that you have today that are doing certain things like your advisory work, your tax work, may not be the right people to get you out the door, and that's okay. But you have to know, where do I go to find that? And that's why we built the M&A and Wealth Transfer educational platform.
Let's talk about the people you've worked with, some of the stories maybe, and if you have one, I'd love to hear. Do you have a story that sticks out to you, maybe an inspirational or a testimonial of maybe somebody who's come to you that you've helped through this process that kind of stands out?
Absolutely. We have, obviously we can't share the names for privacy, but, I'll give you a perfect example of someone who came to one of our events earlier this year. Attended the conference. The 3 partners were there. They saw the movie. They talked with our team, and they came up to us afterwards and said, "Hey, we have an unsolicited offer that just came in from a competitor, and we're pretty excited, but we don't have any clue." This is a technology firm, so they're really good at the technology. They have no idea what this exit looks like, but the number was around $15 million. And generally, we're seeing a lot of unsolicited offers from PE firms and competitors because what is their job? Their job is to try to buy your company for as little as possible and extract as much value on the back end. Right. As the owner or the seller, and our 6-1 team's job is to get you the maximum value at exit so that you can go do something else. So we brought in the M&A team, brought in the investment banking team, did an estimate of value, and put the package together, went out to market. We had, within 90 days, we had a little over 12 indications of interest. And the company is currently in the process of being sold and closing for about $30 million. Double. And we're seeing that a lot because, again, there's a lot of the big players out there looking to buy these lower middle market companies for as little as possible, and they will grind you and wear you down, especially if you don't have that right team of advisors in place. So that was a great success story, but we have many of those stories that relate to that kind of a situation.
It's got to be pretty eye-opening for the business owner to look at that and go, well, geez, if I had not made the step, not that it was bad, but look at what I saved myself, or what I gained actually.
Absolutely. And then we throw in the tax efficiency of it, creating lifetime income, legacy planning, all the other things that business owner wanted to do with that group. And they're going to take some of the money and go start a new company, right? Because a lot of these folks don't have anything to retire to. They're retiring from something. So the goal is, what do you want that to look like? But just knowing you have a place to go to get that information to make sure you're getting the best deal possible is very gratifying for us. We're very passionate about that, about providing the education first so that they can make a good decision and help these business owners that have built the backbone of this country. When you look at the majority of privately owned businesses, they are responsible for most of the employment in the United States.
Yeah. It always sounds good to think I'm going to go sit on a beach with 30 million. But, you know, guys who build companies like that, they can do that for about 4 days. And then they're like, get me back to work. Get
you
me
can only
something
play
new.
golf so many days a week.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but again, we see that, right? That's why it's so important to have a vision of what's next, right? What is the wealth gap? What am I taking out of the business? A lot of business owners don't truly understand. Yes, I'm paying myself a salary, but yet there's other perks. There's travel benefits. There's all the other travel and entertainment expense. There's a lot of things that come out of your business. So what is your real number, right? And it's funny because when we talk to, in many cases, the husbands and wives, the wives have a completely different vision of what they want this to look like. They want, or a husband, even if it's a female-owned company, they want their spouse to be home and not be stressed. They've done it for 30 years. They don't want to do it another 30. But lifting that veil of not truly understanding what the process looks like provides clarity and gives us the ability to take them down that path to success.
Yeah, well, this has been a great conversation. So interesting. A big audience out there listening to you right now. I'm sure a lot of people in the situation that we specifically laid out. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, maybe a little bit about how the process works when they do first make contact. Give everybody where they can go.
Well, again, it's all built on that first conversation, right? We have some tools available within the MA and Wealth Transfer Conference designed to give you that first 10 questions of what's that conversation. Are you ready? And so you can go to mawtc.com to register for one of the events. If we don't have an event near you, you can still reach out on the contact form through the website, and we can set up that 30-minute consultation to talk about just a snapshot of where are you today, what's your objective, and what do you need, what steps do you need to take to start having the conversation. Once you've had the conversation, we have other tools. We have an exit map assessment, which takes about 15 minutes. It's 22 key questions, does not require any financial or personal information, just an assessment of your business from your standpoint as the owner. And then we can have a conversation around the report that comes out, and it will identify and score each category and where you are in the preparedness, and it will identify the gaps, and then we can have a conversation about what's next. So we also, post-conference, there will be a series, it's called In the Boardroom series. Those In the Boardroom series will be each of our key 6-1 team members conducting online classes and follow-ups to the content about, for example, EOS, the entrepreneurial or operational system, right? How do you implement it? Where do you start? How do you talk to an implementer? So then the taxes, the estate planning, all the other pieces of the 6-1 team will be available via what we call an In the Boardroom series. Again, you can register for that at mawtc.com. And if there's a city we're not in, we do represent clients pretty much in all 50 states. So we're more than happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Kelly, I mean, for such a complicated issue, you guys sound like you really do a lot of hand-holding, like you make it a family, you make it comfortable, and obviously that's what someone who's going to take this under is looking for, so that's great stuff. Give the website one more time.
It's mawtc.com.
mawtc.com. Kelly Carter, thank you so much for being here on Spotlight Television.
Thanks, Damon. Appreciate it.
And I want to thank you for watching. And until next time, we'll see you right here on Spotlight Television. All right, so let's talk about the team a little bit. If you had to kind of single down key components of an M&A team that a business owner needs to have and feel comfortable with, what would they be?
Well, we talked about the 6-1 earlier, and that's 6 key team members in that one operating system. The 6 key members start with essentially the financial advisor, because they kind of become the Sherpa or the guide in bringing all of the other key partners, strategic partners onto the team, looking at taxes, looking at what's next, the wealth gap, et cetera. Then you've got your CPA, who's going to be the expert in the tax portion. Good, bad, or indifferent, in many cases, your family CPA that's done the tax work for the last 25 years, probably not well versed in the M&A transaction world. So we need to find a firm that's got a very large footprint that can come in and provide that tax planning at a higher level. So again, it is what it is. The estate planner. The estate planning attorney is going to help us do some of that tax planning. So it's a critical role in that generational wealth, and how do you want this to plan, and what happens when both of you are gone, mom and dad or whoever, grandma and grandpa, how do you want these monies to be generationally handled? So the estate planning is important. You've got the M&A attorney who's going to focus on the legal intricacies of the deal. There's a lot of regulatory issues, again, tax issues, so there's a lot of integration within this 6-1 team. But that M&A attorney is going to be the one to draw up the contracts and make sure that we've crossed the T's and dotted the I's. Then you've got the M&A advisor, which is essentially the investment banker. And they're going to go out, whether you're looking at growth through acquisition, where you as a business want to go buy other firms, or you're looking to exit through a strategic buyer, a PE firm, or some sort of an ESOP or other type of a tool. For exit, they're going to find the right buyer, and they're going to put together the EOV, what we call the estimate of value. So we know what that market value looks like based on trends, and they will go out to their group of buyers and find you offers, what we call indications of interest. And now you'll have the option to narrow it down. That's where, again, the M&A attorney, financial advisors, the CPA, and the investment banker are all going to work together once that happens. You've got the exit planner, who is really focused on helping with valuation and growth. So that exit planner in a lot of cases is our firm, because we're certified exit planning advisors. And our goal is to bring those team pieces together. And then the valuation enhancement, which is when we talk about 6-1, that's the operating system. What business operating system do you have that outlines your vision and has all of the key roles and responsibilities defined and measurable? The more you use a platform like EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, we recommend using EOS, and there's implementers all over the country. But running on EOS, when a strategic buyer or PE firm comes in to buy you, they can look at those metrics and clearly and concisely know exactly where the business has been, what the growth rates are, what any issues are that maybe need to address. But it will provide a value enhancement factor that drives that bottom line number.
And it seems like the continuity, ease of all of these things that you're describing, that can only be beneficial to making the deal happen, no, on a most basic level?
Absolutely, because all of those pieces are critical in the transaction. And if one of those is neglected, it can have a domino effect on the end number. Plus, it takes a lot of stress off the business owner, because you got to remember, while you're going through this process, you still have to run your business. And the last thing you want to do is, in that last 12 months, as you're getting ready to exit, your business starts to see a drop off. And guess what happens to your valuation? Your numbers are going to go down. Or a lot of times that can be a deal killer, because they're saying, okay, how important is this business owner? Part of the EOS model is to remove that business owner from the day-to-day. The business, here's the question. Can you as a business owner leave your business for 30 days and come back and the house is not on fire, right? Most business owners can't answer that question. They've won this badge of honor for years about, they haven't had an ability to take a vacation. Well, that's great, but that's not something to brag about. That just means that we need to clean up your operational efficiency so you can leave your business on your terms.
All right, Kelly, this has been a great conversation. Let's do the most important thing we can do. Let everybody know who's out there listening, maybe in this situation, on that precipice of making a decision of how to do this, how they can get in touch with you.
Well, there's several ways they can get in touch with us, Damon. One of them is they can go to mawtc.com, and they will find the conference schedule there for a city near them. They can also, if we don't have a conference in their city this year, they can go to the website and request a consultation, which will set up a 30-minute call to just find out kind of where are they in the process and start the conversation that we talked about before, those 10 key questions. We've also got, we've also partnered with Scott Bushke from Cornerstone Business Solutions, and he wrote a book called Finish Strong. We wrote the foreword for that book, and there's also a workbook that goes with it. We will offer the folks that want a copy of that book. We'll set up a 15-minute call, make sure we get them the copy of Finish Strong. There's also a 7-part podcast series called Finish Strong, which walks through a much deeper conversation on each one of the steps that we talked about today. So you can go listen to the podcast series, you can request a copy of the book and the workbook, register for the conferences, or schedule just an initial consultation with one of our 6-1 team members to see where you are in the process and what we do next after we start the conversation.